In session, we need to consider action on closed session items. Do we have a motion? Mr. Burdine.
Yes, Madam President. I move to appoint Melissa Bolding to the position of elementary school principal and to approve her as a professional development and appraisal system appraiser for the 2014-15 according to the Commissioner rules concerning educator appraisal provided in the Texas Administrative Code.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Burdine and a second by Mr. Rice. Do we have discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Do we have any other motions from closed session? Ms. Hellinger.
I move that the board delegates authority to the superintendent to approve contracts of employment for campus administrators for the 2015-2016 school year.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Hellinger and a second by Mr. Rice. Do we have discussion? I have a question. Is there a limit to that authority, or are we doing it just for the summer, or how does that work? Your attorney, sir? I'm sorry, I need you to speak into the microphone.
As a practical matter, that hiring will occur during the summer months, but the contracts will be for the upcoming school year.
Okay, but for when would Dr. Dupree have this authority? From now until we fire him or we revoke it, or for all time?
For now until you revoke it, but only for contracts for the 2015-16 school year. So after that year, if you're looking at hiring for subsequent school years, he'd need to come back to the board for that authority.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions or other comments?
I'm not sure we're answering the question. My intent in making the request, it would be through probably mid-August until we get on back to a regular meeting cycle, not an ongoing throughout next school year.
So the motion could be either withdrawn by consensus and then remade with that modification, that it would only be through the end of August, or an amendment could be made to the current motion.
Turn on your microphone.
I'd like to amend my first motion to add just to the end of or mid of August.
Second.
We have an amendment to the original motion to put a time limit to the middle of August. Do you want to say a date? Do you want to say a number?
August 15th.
Yes.
And can I interject to?
Yes.
I would ask you to consider perhaps the end of August, because with school starting the last week of August, it's very possible we might be dominoing from principal, AP to principal, and needing to backfill right up till the first day of school, depending on resignations or other activities.
So how would August 31st work for you?
That would serve our needs very well.
All right. Ms. Hellinger, could you withdraw your amendment and then?
I would like to withdraw my amendment and amend to my original motion that we have, that superintendent has until the end of August, August 31st.
2015.
Second.
Sorry. Just a stickler for details. All right, we have an amendment adding August 31st, 2015 to our original motion. Do we have discussion on this amendment?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment more like, and that is also, as my understanding, it is especially the busy time, and we are not going to be convening or available all the time to make those. So it is more like a convenient or a practical matter to delegating that authority for a limited period of time. That was my understanding. So thank you for that clarification.
Good. Thank you, Mr. George. So let's vote on the amendment now, which is the date, the August 31st, 2015. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The amendment passes unanimously. So now we have a motion delegating authority to the superintendent to hire campus administrators over the summer, I can't remember all of this, through August 31st, 2015. Do we have discussion on this motion? I believe you're correct, Mr. George. This is a matter of convenience since we won't be meeting much in the summer. And there will be a lot of hiring of campus administrators that needs to be done. And Dr. Dupree's promised us a list of all these administrators around the first week of school, so we can have a list and who's assigned to what school, because I think some will be moving from school to school as well. Excellent. All right. Do we have any discussion? Are we ready to vote? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. I think that ends our closed session items. Now we have an action item. Action item 6A, which is the approval of a resolution regarding missed instructional days. So this is on page 5 of your agenda packet. Yes, we need a clarification on exactly what this is, because at first I thought it was just the resolution to pay the staff for those days, and now I'm reading it again and seeing that there's also a waiver for the missed instructional day.
James, this is for approval for the resolution for the payment of staff for the compensation of full-time and part-time employees, and then also to authorize the actual waiver so that we could submit a waiver to the state for the missed day. And this agenda item that we're seeking approval for is only for May 26th.
Right, and then there's another agenda item later on that's discussing other waivers that will apply for the power outages and such.
Yeah.
All right, so I misunderstood that initially. So we need a motion on this before we get any further.
Madam President, I move to approve action item 6A as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Rice and a second by Mrs. Tossan. Do we have further discussion or questions? Mr. George?
I have a comment,
Yes,
So,
Mr. George.
I think absolutely that is the right thing to do, and in my household, when I heard the school was closed, then the second thing came out of a teacher, oh, that means what, when we are going to be working? So I just wanted to say that you're making a lot of campus staff happy, provided there is no major impact into our children, so, and I think it is absolutely wonderful you're doing that. Thank you.
Do we have further discussion? All right, then all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Now we're on to, thank you, Mr. Bassett, for those clarifications. Now we're on to our review. And the first item is the 2015-16 district goals and priorities.
Yes, as you know, about 18 months to 2 years ago, well, it wasn't quite 2 years ago, maybe 18 months ago, the board approved district goals and priorities for the 14-15 school year that were based on the core beliefs and commitments that were approved by the board. So during that time, we've been executing to those. They're also incorporated into the superintendent evaluation document, which is also included on this evaluation. I've provided you a draft copy of these a couple of weeks ago with the understanding we need to adopt the goals and priorities for the 15-16 school year so that we may finalize the district plan and campuses may finalize their campus improvement plans. I always like to share, our goal is to be fully aligned from the boardroom to the classroom. So from the core beliefs and commitments, and then the board adoption of district goals and priorities, these same priorities and goals would be set forth and reflected in all planning documents for the district all the way down to the school level. And so the goal, we've provided this based on the brief discussion we had about a month ago. And then I wanted to get additional feedback and kind of engage the board to determine what other revisions you would have before we move for approval on the 15th.
All right, so there's two things here. We've got the goals and priorities, and then the build out of that is the superintendent's evaluation instrument. So the only change to the goals and priorities is the addition in Goal 2 of the phrase at the very end, "and staff." Other than that, I think these goals and priorities are the same ones that we've had from last year. So if I can direct the board's attention then to the next agenda item, which is 7B, which is the superintendent evaluation instrument. This we had a conversation about on May 11th, and they've made some edits and changes based on those conversations, and if we have changes or the goals or priorities, we can incorporate them into both documents. Does anybody have any comments or questions on this, on the evaluation instrument? Mrs. Toussaint.
Yeah, one suggestion or proposal I wanted to make, and I think we had some discussion about this at one point, I don't remember exactly when, but we had added the CTE portion under, I think it was Goal 1. Is that where we were, Goal 1? But we also had some conversation about adding another metric for federal and special programs like special ed, and I'm not even sure if we discussed the gifted and talented and ESL, but those were 3 programs in particular that have been cited on numerous occasions and audits and things like that as needing improvement. And so we had some discussion about adding that in to the evaluation. I think particularly with regard to special ed, but those programs in particular were others as well that were cited. So I just wanted to throw out there for discussion, perhaps adding a metric for development of effective systems for administration and maybe assessment of those programs. I was looking a little bit at the language that we had there for, career and technical really was more of the center, but some of the other language that we had was more along the lines of getting effective development of effective systems and that type of thing for those programs.
Did I understand you to say GT, special education, and bilingual ESL?
Bilingual ESL, yeah. And specifically, just to throw out there too, that I think what I wrote down here was development of an effective system for administration and assessment of those programs, including development of effective leadership in these departments and a system for practical and effective professional development of teachers and staff. I mean, those were just some comments that I wrote down, so however that we want that language to look.
Well,
Would you like to comment?
yeah, what I would say is, I think everyone would agree on staff that we're already planning to address GT, we're already in the process of addressing SPED and bilingual ESL, so I really don't think it would be problematic at all. In fact, it would reinforce in this document that these are priorities to all of us, just not to staff. We can put some language around that. Somehow I was distracted here in your last comment, though, Kristen, about
Specifically, what I wrote was to add a measure for development of an effective system for administration and assessment of those programs, including development of effective leadership in these departments and systems for practical and effective professional development of all Fort Bend ISD teachers and staff related to implementation and administration of those programs.
I might get you to email that to me.
I will.
Well, it kind of crosses over to,
Yeah.
between goal 1 and goal 2, so you guys might look at it and split it. It might need to be split between
Yeah.
the two.
I had a hard
things.
time deciding as well. I put it under one, but I wasn't sure.
What I'm
Maybe the
going to
best place.
suggest, and I hope you don't mind me doing this kind of as we're working through this, but if I look on goal 1, priority 2, and you look toward the bottom, I think what you're asking us to add is much more detailed and specific and probably more measurable and actionable than like the last bullet we have there now.
Right.
So I'm going to propose that, because this list can get infinitely long, and we have limited time and limited staff resources. So because we are going to do that, I would propose that we remove then that last one on there that's very broad in nature about comprehensive systems, positive behavior supports, because many of these things are going to be already included in these specific plans.
Well, one of the
we
things,
develop.
as I was looking, because I did read pretty carefully just to see, okay, did we cover this? And I think we did discuss being a little more specific, so I think that's good. The only comment I would make about that is that because we're also studying discipline and truancy and behavior, we may want to keep that separated out, just that, kind of that topic, I guess, or that subject matter. But, so I didn't look at it that closely, but maybe just, we might want to keep that in mind, since that's also another area that you guys are kind of digging into.
But certainly, we need more discussion from other trustees as well, but my follow-up will be to kind of take everything we hear tonight, and by this Friday, send you an updated document so you can look at it again, and then perhaps either call me or send me some additional email feedback as we move toward.
All right, did we have do any of the other trustees have other comments or additions or questions about this document? All right, so it sounds like, I guess my preference would be to leave behavior and emotional supports in there, because we've talked about that being needed in a number of areas, and then these other items sound to me a little more like programming. I mean, they sound like special programs in a way. So I guess we need to develop them in a systematic and effective way, so all students can reach their full potential. Okay. All right, so good. We'll look forward to some language. Then this goes, it is, just if you could stop right there. So the end of it is the leadership competencies, which we have as part of the superintendent's evaluation. I'm just pointing that out because that's another thread that goes through our entire organization. And I really like that. And could you answer I have one other question. The last bullet, if you can scroll up just a little bit, Mrs. Kaiser, stop. Superintendent will develop a program evaluation protocol and cycle for systematic review of district programs. What do you mean by district program? What is meant by a program in that?
Well, in that context, it could be anything from an academic program all the way something down to it's like you see on this agenda, iStation is a reading intervention program we use. We would want to analyze something all the way down to that level of granularity, all the way up to the effectiveness of our overall bilingual ESL program as we're looking at. The goal would be to determine the resources that are being spent, the effectiveness of implementation, and the outcomes that are being through our effort and the resource investment. So it could be, now that's an academic type of program. It could also be operational. You know, it could be something like, is extended day, are we achieving our goals for the extended day program? That's a very big, broad program. Or it could also be something operational like Skyward, you know, our student management system or the online enrollment system. Are we gaining a return on our investment through greater efficiencies and effectiveness in operations?
So you're talking about making sort of a cultural norm in the organization to evaluate programs in a systematic way for their effectiveness.
Yes. Much like you've seen with Gibson in the internal audit process, where there's kind of the risk assessment where we would prioritize, you know, this is where we're kind of breaking ground for our organization. We'd want to gain resources from other organizations with outstanding program evaluation models so we can determine how we prioritize, because we've got an infinite number of programs we could begin to evaluate, but we want to spend our time and limited resources evaluating programs from which we're going to gain the most bang for our buck. So that's why we framed it as developing a protocol and cycle so things are routinely evaluated. Some things might be done every 2 years, others may be 5, but we'll be working to develop that.
Well, and also, I guess from our perspective as trustees, asking to have something evaluated is not, shouldn't be seen as like a punishment. It should be part of our habits, part of our good and effective leadership habits, that we do something, we evaluate it to make sure, to find out how it's working. And that's because the only way to have an environment of continuous improvement is if we continuously evaluate what we're doing. And then not just to generate a report or a memo, but actually to do something about it. So that, I know that's what, I'm just trying to get that out there, it almost is like, you know, it applies to everything. So I'm glad that programs apply to everything. All right, so before we get the superintendent evaluation, I'm sorry.
Just a clarification. I see the leadership competencies, there is so many items saying that it says innovate, but is that similar to what's that vision? The superintendent have for the district? Is that same, or is that something incorporated with this, or we should have something separate?
I don't understand what you mean. These are leadership competencies of the superintendent.
Again, I'm just trying to understand here. I'm not saying it this way or that way. So I'm just saying, I understand innovative, but you know, that when it comes to any leader should have a vision about the future. We're talking about a lot of things current, okay? But what is the vision of our leader? Or even when it comes to board evaluation, which is something, what is the vision of us collectively? What is our district look like 20 years from now, or 50 years from now, for that matter? And I don't know we are discussing that. We are just, I'm not understanding it right. So I hope you understand what I'm trying to say.
I think I do understand what you're trying to say. What you're talking about is sort of visionary conversation and the vision and mission of the district as a whole. This is a little more granular, it's a little more specific. These leadership competencies are more like attributes of individuals. It's difficult to evaluate the board as a whole. We're talking about them can only be individuals, but we're talking about evaluating Dr. Dupree, and we look at those things and we challenge him to be an innovator, to be a collaborator, a problem solver, to be honest, and all those things. So, just because we value those attributes. All right, so would you like to say something, Mr. Spears?
Well, just going to put just a little bit more perspective around it. The leadership team, based on the core beliefs and the young expectations, drafted these leadership competencies to apply to everyone in Fort Bend ISD, because we see that everyone is a leader. And when you look at, where do you want to go as an organization, we decided as a group, these are the main competencies we need from each leader to reach our goals. So these apply to every individual within our organization.
All right, so this is the superintendent's evaluation instrument, and as part of the superintendent, I'm sort of intentionally commenting on this, between the two items, B and C on our agenda. We have, this year, we didn't look at student achievement data as part of the superintendent's evaluation. And I think that we had talked about doing that, or we want to do that, but we didn't have the context because of the changes in testing and so forth. We also had that as part of our board self-evaluation. That kind of got stripped off this year also because for those same reasons. So I'm just bringing it up as an awareness, and I had, on our tables, we have 3 different versions of possible student achievement data. Maybe, Dr. Dupree, you can comment on where we are, because I've sort of lost track of what we can actually use as student achievement data.
Well, as you can see, one of the documents, the document that says results in student achievement, there's kind of a long form and a short form that we have used. The long form, this is something that Kathy Minsberg provided us, which is very helpful in a period where you've got the same assessment measures over time. But when we attempted to use this a year or so ago, we did not have 3 years of history with the STAR test, so it wasn't really very helpful. It's also, it depends on what the board's perspective is. This is very bird's eye view. It's basically saying did it improve or not, and did it improve greater than 3% or between 3 and 5, or greater than 5%. And so again, I think this is a maybe more extended conversation at some point, because this is a highly summarized version. The other documents you have in front of you is the commissioner, this is the TEA commissioner, recommended student performance development to accompany the superintendent appraisal. Clearly, it's much more granular in nature. It's got the various student groups, the various topics. It's designed to indicate whether there's an uptick or a downward tick, year over year. I think it's an improved document over the prior, the results of student achievement. But I'm still thinking this, now, so if I was going to give my opinion, I would say this would probably be good for 1 year, or maybe the 15-16 school year, while we're developing our scorecard. Because once we develop the scorecard, I think the board does need to kind of determine the baseline year, and then we need to start setting some goals for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years out, so they always refer back to that baseline. And then we'll be able to create kind of our own, maybe modified version of this document that will be more beneficial to us, that addresses the goals we want to set. So I think with some of the changes in TEKS and the math changes this year, it's hard to set a new baseline for math now based on using 14, 15, because the commissioner's not rendering any output really on mathematics this year. There's no accountability related to it because it's still brand new. So, we may want to even start it by baselining ELA or some of the other subjects on 14, 15. But that's just, we need to kind of decide how we want to proceed with that. Certainly in the near term, the document's a sound document for 1 year, just year over year. But I think for the goal of the board, express more interest in more longitudinal goals and monitoring our progress over longer periods of time than 1 year over the next.
Okay, and I'll just add to that, because I think our one of the reasons we sort of evolved into this longer form was that we don't have a lot of confidence in the state-generated test. So we kind of liked the concept of using some of these more norm referenced and maybe some other indicators of college readiness or career readiness or something along those lines. We kind of dabbled in it by getting the PSAT, and now we're giving the PSAT to all of our students, so maybe that shows us something. We talked, there's some attendance information, advanced placement participation, and we looked at that data this year. We didn't really tie it to an evaluation, because those are 4 hours. I'm just bringing that up. That's why this looks like this, and I'm not sure. I mean, do we have district assessment data that can help us to know how students are achieving? Is that a good way to look at it? That's something that's available to us that would help us.
Well, I'm going to answer Phyllis and Kristen, they want to jump in. I would guard against using district assessment data because that's clearly formative assessment data that teachers are using sometimes before they even talk to curriculum to gauge student readiness. So I think we do want to go based on summative data like the other norm reference or criteria reference test that you referred to here. I think you can get a slippery slope if you're going to start using formative data to assess your organization. And that's not to say we would ever report that out periodically to the board, but I don't think you want to use it as part of a summative evaluation for the organization or for the superintendent.
All right, well, I kind of agree with that. I'm just looking for something that I have some confidence in. And I do think we need to look at student achievement. They don't know what to look at to help us to analyze it.
But now I would, again, this is where I think the development of the scorecard is critical, because we'll be able to present many different components and let the board determine what speaks to the board. You know, is there a little bit of STAR data and a little bit of attendance data, some national level exams? There's a lot of different indicators that we can combine with our relationship with URG and just other things. Again, that's all going to be state test driven types of data, but there's also attendance and teacher turnover. You can say there's lots of different pieces that are going to impact this data.
What are district assessments?
Maybe district assessment?
What are the district assessments given? It's more than once a year, right? So you really don't think you could pull some data out of that? I mean, a lot of home teachers sometimes use those as grades. Really?
Well, they're not supposed to, but they some of them do.
Yeah, I think they do.
Shouldn't be. That's all designed to inform their instruction.
I would think you'd be able to pull some data out of there. So, I mean, some of it, yeah, they're testing things, but
We can absolutely.
I wouldn't just throw stuff. I wouldn't throw all that information out and not use it. I would look at it and consider if you can find something in there that can be used.
Well, I'm not suggesting it's not. What I'm saying is it's very useful for its intended purpose. If teachers are using it properly, it's very useful. But it's not something I would want my performance evaluated on or the organizational performance evaluated on, because it's data that's gathered during the instructional processes. It's not a summative-based evaluation. It's designed to gather input around, are we teaching what we said we're going to teach, and are students learning or not? And often what we find is we haven't taught effectively, that's why we go back and reteach based on the outcomes.
So maybe you can use that, the fact that I think there's data in there that you can probably use. Maybe that's not the highlight of the scorecard, but just based on what you said, okay, so we're having to do less reteaching because we're becoming more effective at accomplishing our teaching goals, things like that. But not necessarily the numbers, the scores or the grades.
That makes sense.
So I'm not
not sure I agree completely with that, just from an evaluation standpoint. I understand what you're saying, Dave, and I entirely disagree, but I know just from my own personal experience with my kids that a lot of times those district assessments are given to see where the kids are, and then they tailor instruction to that, so a lot of the kids end up performing poorly, not because of anything they're not doing, but because they're using it as sort of roadmap. So that's, that's what I'm hearing you say, Charles. So, but some of the teachers are using it as a grade, I will say that.
Okay, so how about, let's say for example, I don't know, tell me if I'm like completely off here, but say that, you know, at the beginning of, when did they give those assessments typically? Say, so let's just pick math.
Microphone, please.
They typically will give a beginning of the year assessment, mid-year assessment, and end-of-year assessment at the early grades. And those kind of fall with the quarters, because at the end we have the star.
Okay, so say, I'm just throwing this out, say it's you got a 7th grade math district assessment in the fall. And all of a sudden, year over year, kids are starting to do better. In other words, they're coming to 7th grade knowing more, right? Because you're assessing where they're at. So that's a good thing. I mean, that's something that maybe could be captured. To say that, okay, we're doing better each year.
Or even growth over the year, if we're
Right.
looking at.
If they're fairly consistent.
The research on assessment, Stiggins is one of the big researchers, and they talk about assessment for learning or assessment of learning. And the assessment for learning is the formative assessment. And then in a adult, everyday kind of world, if I were taking driver's ed or something of that nature, and my instructor wanted to see, well, are you ready to move on to beyond road signs and get behind the wheel or whatever? I might have an assessment, and that would be formative. But when I got in the car with the state trooper, that would be the summative assessment. And our district assessments are not summative in nature. They are assessment for learning, not necessarily assessment of learning, which is why I was rather surprised when you were saying some of the teachers may be taking grades on those, because they are to guide their instruction so that they would know where to go back, reteach, and so forth.
And I'm just saying, if they're coming to the new grade better prepared year after year, then maybe that's something we want to capture. I understand what you're saying, you know, but I'm just looking.
All right, I'll make the suggestion then.
Yeah, and the discussion is what else can we use, what other assessments, what other tools, what other, pieces of data. So just throw them down there.
One other comment I would make on that, because as I'm looking at this, I agree with Grail that I don't think we have a high level of confidence in the state assessment. And particularly, I don't want to lose sight here of our kids that are 504 or that are special ed. We capture virtually no information on those children, whether it's through STAR or district assessments, because many of those kids are already out of district assessments, mine included. So you would never get an assessment on her from the district assessment because it can't be modified. So there's no sense in her taking it. In addition, especially now that we don't have STAR M, she's taking basically a regular STAR with some accommodations and, setting her up for failure. So I would think that we probably need to keep that in mind and make sure that we're measuring or capturing growth or improvement in those special populations and think about how we can do that. But I think I agree with Grail that what we've been using may be the better instrument because of the PSAT and some of the nationally normed assessments that are given where we can look year over year and see actual numbers, growth, that kind of thing. And I don't know what the answer is for the special populations because that's hard.
Dr. Richter.
I just wanted to add, as we have the PSAT and the SAT, you'll be getting a board, I think hopefully a board report in August, but those are being completely redesigned and beginning in the fall. So that may be a little problematic with measuring from one year to the next on PSAT as well as SAT. That will change next spring. So that's just on the horizon out there for, the nation. And luckily Fort Bend ISD has been kind of on the cutting edge of getting some of that information. But nevertheless, as far as just looking at results, it'll be a little bit different for a while.
Well, it sounds like we're going to need your expertise in figuring out and making suggestions to us about how we can monitor student achievement. And I think you've heard us talk about we want to look at growth, we want to look at improvement, we want to look at all the subpopulations, we want to look at special ed, the English language learners, and how we give these kids all these tests, how do we have no information and no way to figure out how they're doing? That's crazy, so.
I think part of the issue we're facing is even when you think about traditional growth models, they're all rooted in the state exam. Everything we have, short once it, unless, I guess the DRI and all of those, but even those are really more formative in nature and diagnostic. So, but there, we're having the right conversation, and I think that this is what we need to hear from the board's perspective as we try to build the dashboards and scorecards. And so certainly as we move forward, what my proposal would be is that you go ahead and move forward with the goals and priorities that would enable us to begin our planning and get to work, so we can continue working on this and maybe even bring it to the board, in August, September timeframe after we have more time to really look at it. Keeping in mind, one of the priorities we have already established is the development of a district-wide assessment program. So, really what we're talking about in one sense is getting, I don't like the term cart before the horse, but that's kind of what's happening is we haven't even built our assessment program. We're talking about how we're going to measure success. But on the other hand, if we set the metric out there and then go toward that, that's also a good way to do it. So we'll do some more research and bring some more dialogue to the board in the next couple of months for some more discussion about this.
Well, and I like the thing that Mr. Rosenthal said. Let's look at what we're doing. What tests are we already giving? What things are we already doing? What are we already spending money on that we can use? Because surely out of all of this stuff that these kids do, there is information about how they're achieving. And we just have to get it into a format that is useful and understandable and useful to us, useful to inform progress of our district, useful to our community. Surely there has to be a way to, there has to be something out there. No, I just can't believe it. Because I certainly don't want a new assessment. You don't want another thing to assess.
Nor do we.
Okay.
And be sure of that.
All right. All right. Any more on this? No, we're on board self-evaluation now. So now we're on item 7C. And I'll just remind the board that when we did our board self-evaluation in April, we split item 6, what's item 6 on this, into two, item 6 and 7. And then we did this during our self-evaluation when we were struggling with how to evaluate ourselves. And then what's now item 24, we just revised slightly to make it look a little bit better. Any questions on this? Yes, Mrs. Paulson.
Did we discuss adding the leadership competencies to the board self-evaluation in some way, shape, or form? I know we did a little bit of that.
Yes, it's on page 1. Someone wrote, stop it there. See, right above the chart, it says leadership competencies will be self-evaluated on an individual basis. All right, then let's keep going. Item D is a resolution amending the committed fund balance. We pretty much talked about that earlier tonight. Do we have more questions on that? Then we have the proposed tax resale deed for property owned by the district in trust. These are things that we ended up owning because people didn't pay their taxes, and so we own it and try to auction it off or buy it. All right, any questions on that? The next one is item F, which is selection of Ottawa architect for architectural services to renovate Missouri Stage. This is page 53. Mr. Rosenthal.
Yes, I have some questions. Actually, it's not about the contractor or the contract. My question is, my concern is, this building seems like it's in pretty desperate shape. Why do we feel like we need to go ahead and redo this and make it usable? I realize it had been put on the bond, so it was kind of promised that we would do this. But, I don't know, $4 million seems like a lot of money, and I don't see why we should be doing this at this point.
Well, it's actually, I would tell you, this is a priority to a segment of the community in Missouri City. And from the first day I joined the district, it's something that I heard about as important to them that we take this. I think it's probably the oldest building left in Missouri City, is my understanding. And it's kind of like the Sugar Land auditorium that we'd like to see since we own it. See us invest a little bit of our capital in bringing it back to a restored state. So our goal has been to make it usable again. And so when I look at that, it's not just simply putting money into it just to make it usable without having a reason to do so. One of the issues we face in the district is we do not have adequate meeting spaces. We don't have large facilities. So we need to do ED for a large group of staff, teachers, or administrators, or to conduct community meetings outside of schools. We feel like this is a facilitator for this amount of money we could use it. It could become a good vital, it's a key spot, as you know, right there. A key spot in Missouri City. We feel like that by being good citizens, we can restore that whole area, but and help and make it usable for the district and the community. One of the things we're committed to doing, with Nancy's already been working with Max and some members of the community to put together kind of a community organization and support it, because we want to do the essentials to get it right in. Right now, when they tore down Missouri City Middle School, they cut it off completely, so it's been separated with no conditioned air at all. So we just want to bring it back up to a basic functional standard, so it's usable on a minimal level, but then engage the community for additional fundraising. We're able to do more. We don't want to spend district resources just to make it nice.
Yeah, because that's my concern. It's like, all of a sudden, we become the Fort Bend Historical Preservation Society.
That is
And,
nice.
I mean, that's nice, but, you know, and I'll say the same thing for the Lakeview Auditorium, you know. If we're just doing that for the historical sake, then I think the private money needs to be used for that, not taxpayer money.
So our goal is to make it functional so that we can use it as a district. But if they want to take it to another level, as they do the auditorium, then there's already a community group organizing around that in Missouri City.
That's great, that's fine, especially if there's other people willing to put their money into it too, then that's fine. Okay, and then in our talk before the meeting, you know, we think we'll actually be able to rent this facility out occasionally and get some revenue generated maybe?
Yes, sir, I think we do. I've talked to at least 2 separate groups who have needs for athletic events, and we had a request the other day for an art exhibit, and so there's all kinds of ways to rent this facility. And to Dr. Dupree's point, we actually have a meeting tomorrow night, and there was between the admin building and the annex, there was no space, so we're actually going to a campus for a central meeting tomorrow night. So to Dr. Dupree's point, there really is a big need for district space in a central location.
Would this be used for, I mean, is it still going to be used as a gym and made it so that the kids at Missouri City High School can use it, or Jones Elementary, or they're all on that same campus, right? And this
Yes.
facility's on that campus?
The middle school, of course, has a competition gym. The elementary does not have a competition gym. That certainly the students could walk over there to use this building very easily. But yes, to answer your question, the purpose would be to restore it as a gymnasium. It also has a very nice stage area that can be restored, so it could be sort of a multi-use type facility where you could have a basketball game on a Saturday and turn around and have a meeting on a Monday. And it would be very, very functional and very flexible.
Mr. Murdy?
My questions are similar to Mr. Rosenthal's. I was just curious about any money generators, and then local sponsors like Toyota or Frost Bank, or I know I've talked to a few folks in the community that are looking for opportunities to put their names on something, so that may be something we can explore, but that wasn't the answers.
Yes, sir, and Ms. Porter's been working with a couple of groups already as well to bring in some interest in areas at a high level of interest. Correct.
Thank you.
Mr. George, can you use the microphone, sir? Go ahead and ask your question, just so it's recorded so everyone can hear.
Yeah, I was just wondering how big of a facility, how much square feet?
I believe the total square footage from memory, I don't have the exact in front of me, I believe it's right around 135,000 square feet. It's that facility.
Madam Chairman, can I add that the city of Missouri City has already inquired about, when it would be able to, or when and if they'd be able to use a facility. And there's all kinds of partnerships, like the county is interested, there's some grants. And like Charles said, it's the only remaining building from Missouri City Independent School District. And it's a real icon in the community. There's a lot of people that went to that school, a lot of people that went to schools or taught, Missouri City. And there's just a broad interest in supporting this project.
Thank you, Mrs. Porter. Okay, do we have any other questions on this? All right, then let's move forward. Thank you, Mr. Cleaver. Next is this is the audit committee recommendation for the audits and program management services from Gibson Consulting. Haven't heard about that before. Yeah. Any comments or questions on that? Then next is the memoranda of understanding.
pull the item, let's see where are we here, H1. And we'll delay consideration of that. And number 2 is, that's the JJP.
All right, so we're on to memorandum of understanding for the JJAP program, which is a memorandum between Fort Bend County, ALEAF, and Stafford and us. Do we have comments or questions on that? Mrs. Fossett.
I just wanted to get a general explanation of the program and how we use it, and I guess how it works with our overall discipline program.
I think the best way to describe it would be, as you know, we have an alternative placement program we call the DAEP, and that's for students who need to be removed from their campus. The JJAEP, when we get into the juvenile justice system, is basically taking that to the next step. So for example, if a student were to be in the DAEP, which in our district is, Ferndale, Henry, or Emerald, and they were to have disruptive behavior that was perpetual, or they were to engage in something at a high level of discipline infraction, then they would be moved over to the JJAEP, which is even more restricted. In addition to that, a student from any of these 3 districts could be assigned straight to the JJAEP if they were to be in perhaps a felony offense, something that were very serious. So that's about, they are taught in a small group, very similar to the DAEP, but it is more restricted. And it is for a longer period of time. There's not like an early out for 45 days of doing what you're supposed to do. Usually you stay, like if you enter in November, you would stay all the way through to the following calendar year in a JJAEP placement. It's a much longer placement, and it does depend on the infraction.
And where is it?
It's connected to.
It's right next to Ferndale.
Okay, so the building
Monitored
is,
together, but they're separate.
okay, so the building is still in organized.
And because we're the largest, and as you can see, we have the lion's share of the students with the size of our district, with 56 students, and 53 are from Fort Bend ISD.
Thank you.
All right, do we have more questions about that one? All right, then we move on to item I, which is the low attendance and missed instructional day waivers. These are the waivers for the days that the electricity was out, Willow Ridge, First Colony Middle School, and Elkins High School. We have comments or questions about that?
There's actually a little bit more to it than that. We'd also be asking for the board to approve us submitting waivers for low attendance days. And so what that means is when we have a baseline of what attendance was at a given campus for the 13-14 year, if there were days during the 14-15 year that we're just in, where they had attendance of 10% less than the prior year because of maybe there was bad flu or something like that happened, we can actually submit days on a day-by-day basis, and that can help us increase our ADA that we get paid on. And so that's it's just a process that we could go through. A lot of analysis in terms of looking at the days of the campus on a daily basis, but that's another waiver that we need your approval to submit for. And we're, again, because we don't have that list yet, and we're still working on that.
Right, so that list wouldn't be out until next week, or even after that?
Well, even after that, it's going to take a while, and so it's just for the right to have those, to be able to submit those waivers, and obviously we'll tell you what they were when they submit, but it is common for boards to give that authority, and then we submit the waivers when we have the data.
All right, Mrs. Fossett?
So the list of missed instructional days is as follows, is not complete.
No, that's
That is complete. Those are fully missed instructional days.
Okay.
That's different than a low attendance
Low
day.
attendance, so you're asking for both. You're asking
ma'am.
for approval to seek waivers for the missed instructional days in addition to the low attendance days. Thank you.
Excellent. All right. No further questions on that, so let's move on to purchase items. We have the Skyward New Student Online Registration. It's nice to hear that we have a pilot program that's gone well. We explained it, I like that. We have data about it. Very nice. Next is the host of web pages. Another pilot program that's going well. Anything else? Do we have, I don't go ahead.
Okay, I have a couple quick questions. So how, I guess, so the piloted program has gone well. And will campus PTOs and PTAs be able to use these websites, or will they still have their own websites?
We're hoping to provide them with their part of the website. We're hoping that we'll do that. But that's something that we will need to determine whether or not that will be part of the district campus website or not. And that's something that we're working with school leadership and as well as principal to determine.
When will we determine that? What's that, do we have a timeline?
Right now, hopefully before we fully roll it out, we're going to determine that. With the pilot, we didn't implement that because simply by that we had to train somebody to maintain that and make sure that the content is checked regularly. So, like I said, we're working with the team to determine whether or not that's feasible to add others.
Okay, and what about campus departments? For example, the science department, the history department, will they be able to run all of their department websites through this? So we don't have to use Weebly and Edmodo. Everything's going to be one-stop shopping, except maybe the PTOs and PTAs.
Yes, ma'am.
I cannot begin to express to you the nightmare in my house.
Yeah, you can check the pilot websites such as Kentner and as well as FBISD.
Okay. Just in case you didn't want to show favoritism or anything. But
No.
okay, so that's good. I hope so, yes. It's on the. I see it's number one for high school. Yeah, because as much as we can make that consistent and consolidate those, I think I speak for all parents in that. One other comment I would make. One other question. Will we be able to integrate access to Skyward now through, how is that working? Because I know there's still some confusion about when do you have to go to Skyward and how can you access things through the district website?
The parent portals or access is still through Skyward, and there will be links to the Skyward from all of the campus website, as well as the main district website.
Okay. I know it's there on the main district website, yeah.
And there will be links to the Skyward
Okay.
parent website.
One last just comment I would make is that I see we've got some priorities, group 1, group 2, that kind of thing. And I would just make a suggestion that since Heritage Rose Elementary is going to be getting so many new students, we might want to consider putting them in group 1 because we're doubling enrollment there, and I know that already there are a lot of parents looking for information, and we've never had a PTO website there. We've never had a very good access to information through Heritage Rose. Take it from former PTO president there is very, very hard to get someone to help us with that, and so I would just, on their behalf, ask the district to consider that, because we're gonna get a huge influx of kids, and parents really floundering for where to get information and how to get information.
We would definitely look into it.
Okay, thank you.
The reason why the way that it was chosen by Julie was due to the fact that we don't want to overburden the digital learning specialists who are helping the teachers,
Yeah. And
create the websites.
that's certainly understandable, but Heritage Rose is kind of an anomaly. It's different because they're getting such an influx with all the rezoning, and it's all at one time, and it's not being kind of phased. So I would just think that we should consider that. Thank you.
All right, anything else?
I just wanted to add it. I'm all for updating and upgrading technology. But one thing, it is just an observation. Who is in charge of maintaining these campus websites? Because one thing, it happened to me last week. One school was celebrating the 20th anniversary. And I was invited, I wanted to go and check what time it is. It was not on that website. And another school was celebrating their 30th anniversary, and they were invited me, and I went, last minute I wanted to check what time it is. It was not there. And so why do we have a website? I don't know. I mean, again, is that just me seeing it, or is something wrong with me, or I don't know. I'm just...
I'd like Nancy, why don't you speak to that, because that's a communication issue.
Well, the Cold Fusion, old websites, it sounds like you were looking for information on one of the older websites. They're problematic. And, I don't know why on a big event like that, a campus wouldn't put that kind of information on it. It may have been on there and just not easy to find. And so if you'll talk to me, I can find out more specifically
I
about
mean, the
it.
calendar too.
Yeah.
There's nothing on it.
Yeah.
Means not just that event, nothing on it. And also the website says we don't have any upcoming events.
Well, a lot of times, those can be found in our news center and announcements, so perhaps the school thought that it was on the district website and didn't post a link to it on theirs. But I'm glad you brought it to our attention. We'll check with them, because those are very big events where the community is invited, and that's a good point.
Right, I think because these days, the first thing is somebody wanted to find out, let's say there's a lot of people moving to Fort Bend area. Fort Bend, they wanted, okay, they know that, okay, our children are going to go to this school. So the first thing they're going to do is they're going to go and check the website. If there's nothing on it, other than just the name and the logo or the mascot, and that doesn't look good. And also, I mean, again, maybe it's an old program, maybe once everything is rolled out, we are going to do a better job. I don't know.
It's very difficult on those old Code Fusion websites to use a lot of the tools that we have on the ones that are being updated, and your point is well taken. But, we can talk to some of the campuses during this transition. A lot of them have Weebly's and other accounts, and we're trying to, standardize it all. But I'd like to find out more about which schools you're talking about later on.
Again, I'm not complaining about one school, and I'm just
That's a
saying
good point.
there should be a system in place, or somebody should be looking into, okay, making sure everybody utilizing that tool which is available. And it is about information. We live in an information age, and that's my thought about it.
What I hear you saying, Mr. George, is you want to be sure that there's somebody that's in charge of reviewing the content and reviewing the search engines that are available on particular websites, whatever. However that's set up, the navigational issues and addressing those navigational and search issues and making sure the content's up to date. And I would also add the content is appropriate, because not all content would be appropriate for a school website. So can someone speak to the fact that we have people in place that do that type of work?
Well, they do, and it's a joint project. And actually, because the back end of the campus websites Technology is the owner of the campus websites, and we do review content, but it's very possible during this transition that we need to just go back with our teams and look at the existing websites. They're not going to be changed into 2016 and do some things to support them. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, so based on the current system, who's responsible for the content on that, the campus information?
Community relations in partnership with technology, because they're, as far as like approving new content and all, we have the standard content that's on it now. As far as updating, that's a communication issue that we can work with principals on during this transition. So the last thing we want to do is schools, like you mentioned, like Heritage Rose, and some of the other ones with the upcoming changes due to, staffing and things like that, is, we'll revisit that, because there's a lot of emphasis and energy being placed on the new websites. And so it's a good point.
I also understand this updating is something like you're creating some information on a Word or PowerPoint or whatever, just uploading it. And if it is an approved content, and somebody should be in charge in the campus,
They do. Each campus has people that are campus administrators for their websites, and there's generally several of them. And due to some of the limits to it, anyway, your points will take, and we'll see what we can do, because there may be some things we can work on with technology, to give them some tools or some training.
Thank you, Mrs. Porter. All right, let's keep going. The next item is the Instructional Assessment Management System. This is ECG contract renewal. Any questions on this? Did we consider possibly hiring a team of people to just migrate all the stuff and end the contract now?
We are looking and creating a plan to see what it takes to migrate it to H40.
So we don't have a plan to migrate it?
If I may,
Go ahead.
we have explored that with Eduforia. Part of the difficulty is that the curriculum is in a certain template, and it doesn't just transfer over into that template. And this is a company that does many school districts in Texas. And we, in fact, inquired with Katie. They migrated their curriculum over to Eduforia and asked how they had done it. They hired a team of teachers who were very familiar with the curriculum and could do that, and paid them to do that migration. And we're looking into that. The issue that we have right now is those teachers are teaching, trying to wind up the school year, and we are getting ready for our summer professional development. But that is, in fact, we talked about getting a team and paying them to do that.
Okay. So, but we haven't determined if we can do that or not. So our backup plan is to renew these contracts.
No, we are going to do that, but it's going to take a year to do it. Meanwhile, our teachers have to have access to the curriculum. While we update our new curriculum that's on the audit, it will be written into Eduforia, so we don't do double work. But while we're migrating this curriculum, we need access to the original, and that's why we have the year of overlap. To allow the teachers to have access to the familiar document while we migrate. We also felt like that was a whole lot of change at one time. To have a new data system, assessment system, and a new curriculum system to adjust to it in the same year.
Yes. One might say that it's better to just rip the Band-Aid off and go for it than to pay for two things at the same time. But, okay, that's fine, it's my fault.
Well, I'm sorry, but I just had to add, when you're dealing with 5,000 teachers, ripping the Band-Aid off is exceptionally challenging.
Right, and I understand. I guess the thing I would say though, when we're talking about, and I can't quite see the total amount of money here, but okay, 170,000. So one might consider just hiring, and maybe it's too late for this now. Hire a team of people, migrate the stuff in 6 weeks, have a professional development, or you're back to school. You know, I don't know. It's just not my city. I'm just observing other ways to solve the problem, rather than pay for two systems. Okay, moving on. iStation Instructional Assessment Software Program. This is a reading intervention program. Do you have any questions on this? All right, next is the district scoreboard replacements. Any questions on this? All right.
James,
Yeah.
if you don't mind, I would like to, since she hung out, in case you had any advertising questions, I did want to introduce our new director of enterprise funds, Ms. Brenda Essenberg is here. And so anyway, we're very happy to have her on today. It was actually her first day. She was around on contract basis a couple days a week. She was on contract basis a couple days a week last time. She's done a lot of work in terms of looking at what other districts are doing on advertising, and we'll be bringing a lot more information forward in the future. We definitely think those costs are going to, those revenues will help offset any costs associated with those.
So that's good. Okay, thank you. So I did ask about that, email about that. I did wonder.
I just have one question about this.
Go ahead.
On that, that spreadsheet, can you explain when it says spectrum versus bulbs versus, what is that?
That is actually a supporting document, it's not supposed to be included in the agenda. Because it's confusing.
So glad I spent about 20 minutes trying to figure it out last night. Thanks.
But if I may, I'm not sure if all wherever it says bulbs, those are the ones we're replacing. We're basically recommending you replace any incandescent bulb scoreboard with an LED scoreboard. So that wherever it says bulbs, so for instance, on page 71, it says high school football, Village Marshall, Travis, and Little Ridge. Those correspond to the ones that say bulbs.
You sure First Colony is not bulbs too? Because I was out there this past fall watching my kid play, and the scoreboard looked like it was in pretty pathetic shape. So I don't know. I was surprised it wasn't on the list to replace.
The football stadium?
Yeah.
Mr. Cleaver, are they all going to LED?
Yes, sir. That's our recommendation.
And how are we checking the electrical power source with some of these? Because I know we've had some issues with some of the schools for them tripping out and not being well grounded and getting hit by lightning and then flashing different numbers and patterns.
Well, I don't think we're putting, making the recommendation for lightning protection. I could be wrong. But in every case, when you go from an incandescent to an LED, you use a whole lot less power. So the power issue, the actual consumption of power is one thing. But if there was a bad circuit, the actual technician during this evaluation checked to make sure that the circuit was good. But in each case, it could be using a quarter or less of the electricity.
Okay, well, do. Part of our-
Very right.
All right, any other questions on this?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Burney?
So on, as far as advertisements go, I've had a few people ask how they can go about finding out about advertisements and inquiring about it. I haven't looked myself. Is that something we'll have in the future of maybe some way on the sign or somewhere we can say for advertising, inquire, you know, to make that easier?
We are going to have something out on our website, and we haven't created it all yet. I mean, Brenda's put together quite a bit of information. I mean, there's information she's seen on the websites for some of the other districts in Katy's out there. We're going to be modeling after that and try to get the word out somehow. But yeah, we'll have something.
I know there's a lot of businesses down in the Warren County area that love to advertise up here. Sure. You know, some larger companies, so I haven't looked, but I'll look for that in the future. Thank you.
All right, anything else on this one? All right, let's move on then to the uninterrupted power supplies. We have one of these for every closet. Okay. All those closets we saw with all those fires back a while back. And these units keep power going for a short period of time while systems can shut down or cool down or something.
Whenever we have a brownout, which is a brief electrical failures, it will keep the system up for about 10 to 15 minutes. That's only enough battery that they have. And what it also does is that it provides a surge protector. As a surge protector, so what happens is that a lot of these areas, we have power that just feeds back into the line and can easily burn our 40,000 to 50,000 switches. So these would definitely help with preventing those type of failures.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, other questions on this one? Moving on to GP20 purchasing co-op. This isn't really it's a small purchase, I guess. It's not really a...
It's just for permission to enter in that co-op. We have that board approval for that.
Okay. Good.
Yes, I have a question. Why are we going to Region 20? What's the reason?
This is actually one that there's a vendor that we're looking at to help us with one of our Affordable Care Act compliance issues. That's actually part of that co-op. They're not part of other co-ops. We haven't seen that available elsewhere.
Region 4.
No, sir.
Or what's the TASB by board?
Right. It's out there in this co-op. So, and I'll be discussing the need for that vendor in our benefits update on the 15th.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bassett. The next item is the relocation setup services for the portable buildings. Do we have any questions on this one? I have a question. Why are we using bond funds to financing that over a long period of time rather than?
Well, Ms. James, these aren't new bond funds. These are funds that are already issued, money that's in the bank. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to spend down the contingencies that we have so that we can close those funds out. The bonds were issued, shortly after the voter authorization in 2007, and they have those funds still active. This many years later is just problematic. I just want to avoid any chance of having any of our our tax exempt status pulled away from our bonds. And so these are eligible expenses, and so really that's what we're trying to do.
How many T-buildings is that for? So we got, we're at a little over $1 million to get them ready.
Yes, sir, that's 11 buildings total.
So it's about $100,000 each.
Yes, sir, that includes the classroom components as well. That's correct.
Okay. Okay. And we own it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right, anything else? All right, moving on. Electrical repairs at First Colony Middle School and Elkins High School. So these are more permanent repairs to, after the emergency repairs have already been done, we've already ratified them, and now we're making a more permanent repair.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
And how did these estimates come about, Mr. Cleaver?
The company Turner Electric, who did the emergency repairs, provided the estimates for this work.
What is the work you're going to do, Mr. Cleaver? What additional work is Turner doing?
Yes, sir. Okay, so bus bars were in place and then they burned. What they did was they physically cut those sections out and temporarily put in wire, cable. So what they're going to do now is they'll come back in and properly put the conduit in and then reuse that same cable to refeed. So they'll use that same cable that they used in the emergency repair. So it's going from a bus bar system to a conduit and cable system.
Is that from the pad mount transformer to the main switchboard?
Yes, sir, all the way.
We're not going to replace it with bus bar?
No, sir, we're going back with conduit and wire.
Why are we doing that?
That was just the recommendation.
Just cheaper?
Yes, sir, and if it were, you have a chance for only one conductor to fail instead of the whole bus bar to fail, is another advantage, if something were to fail in the future.
So it's the First Colony and what, Elkins High School?
Yes, sir, for these two particular ones, just the First Colony and Elkins.
Okay. Do we have an engineer look at that?
No, sir, we are having an engineer look at the one going, the four going forward. We are looking at those.
Should we be having an engineer look at them?
Well, I'm just wondering why we're not going back with the bus bar replacement. I mean, I know that's expedient, but.
The two things I was told was the speed and then the cost. The conduit and cable system is less expensive than the bus bar system. Now, in an initial installation, that might not be the case, but to have a bus bar manufactured exactly, to the spec, a retrofit situation was the expensive part. That's the information I was given.
Okay.
All right, we have further questions on this? All right, then let's move on to the proposed budget amendments. Questions on this? I think so. Well, those are particular specific budget amendments, but we didn't really talk about, so that's all right. And the next is the proposed budgets, which we've talked about. Do you have any questions on that? And we have donations exceeding $10,000.
Colony Bend shade structure, the structure that we've been discussing?
No, that is Colony Meadows.
Thank you.
All right. So now we're on to minutes. Do we have any corrections or changes to the minutes? Suggestions? All right. If you do, you can send them to Jane. And do we have any audience? Do we have any audience members who'd like to respond to our meeting tonight?
No one signed up.
All right, then we're ready for adjournment. Mr. Rice, would you like to make a motion?
Madam President, I so moved.
Second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Adjourn.